So something I put on our Instagram came back around, ended up putting it in the newsletter, and I'd love to extrapolate on it and go into a bit more detail on the podcast, which is I was meeting with this client and she'd been listening to the Driven to Drawn series that we've been doing, and she was going through interviewing for these jobs, and she's describing this company that she really liked, she was really interested in. All the interviews had gone well up to a certain point, and then she's in this conversation with this person who sounds really intense. As she described the interaction, he actually kind of sounded like an 8 to me. But I paused the conversation. I was like, well, hang on a second. It really sounds like he's evaluating you based on how much are you like him. And you're feeling pressure in that moment to perform and to like meet that expectation. So as we were thinking about this whole driven to drawn thing, there is this aspect of internally, I have this sense of I'm driven. I'm driven by certain things. I'm driven by certain impulses and effort and try, and I have to, and I must, and I need to, all of those things. And we've been talking through that season about then moving to the place of being drawn, being of invitation, of intention, where is flow instead of fight, where it's calm effort, this movement. And that's great if that's what we're doing internally. But then there's this other snag when other people put this expectation on you and they're like, no, this is how you need to be. And they're trying to drive you to be like that. And some of us, thankfully, are more self-referencing, where that doesn't affect us a ton. But for a lot of other people, they're really impacted by that. And the knee-jerk reaction is, well, I have to meet your expectation. If you're driving, I'm just like, I've got to just pull this plow. Like, that's the immediate reaction. And so this other piece was coming to mind is like when other people are pushing on me, or they are saying, this is the expectation. They're the ones who are really starting to drive. And I might feel like I have to meet that expectation or perform to that standard or be that way. And then I lose all my sense of flow and invitation and intention. And I'm just like, oh, crap. And it's like another whole aspect of it because it's external to me. I'm not even dealing with my own drive now. I'm having to deal with yours too. Mm-hmm. And it's this other layer that I've just been like thinking about how hard that is to deal with for so many of us.
Yeah. I have thought about the drawn space as something you have to fight for. Like it ironically takes drive to be drawn. You have to push yourself towards it. You have to fight for it because that what you just mentioned, the externals can be so profoundly influential in our lives. We don't even know sometimes how influential. Sometimes it's obvious because it is a type 8 personality who's, a boss that's interviewing you that tells you what you need to be doing. But yeah, I was just on a call this week with a client who said this individual who she was starting to develop a relationship with and was interested in is exhibiting some control and like saying, I need you to do this and you need to do that. She goes, and immediately I recoiled. There was an internal reaction to that. It's like, well, pay attention to that. That's a good thing, is it's telling you something. Not necessarily he's wrong, but there's something about this dynamic that's affecting you. So it is surprising how much that external piece can influence, and you have to really know what your drawn space is and fight for that. If you don't, you'll become part of someone else's flow, someone else's drivenness. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, I like that idea. If you have to fight for the drawn, but I had thought of that before, but I thought of it more of an internal sense. Like I have to fight for my own sense of being drawn. I didn't even consider how many other people actually speak into that mix. How other people, because it's funny, I've been really thinking about this and noticing this in myself. Like as an 8, I am pretty self-referencing, but I'm still highly influenced. I come back to my own opinions, my own thinkings, my own actions, but it's the reason I can't watch certain shows because it just really impacts me emotionally. It impacts me. It can make me feel kind of depressed or something. Like certain kinds of shows can do that. Certain kinds of activities or interactions, they really can impact me. And again, I'm using the word impact. So there's this other question, which is kind of like, well, how do we fight for our own drawnness? that space when sometimes that is the situation. You're in a situation where you're responding to your boss's drivenness, the context, the environment, the culture of your workplace, whatever it may be.
Yeah, wow, that's a big one. Yeah, I had the conversation this week with somebody who's going through a rough patch with their boss and how to work through that. And part of it was you have to have your own truth. You have to know what it is that you're going in there with, and you have to maintain that integrity of this is my view of the situation, and recognition of where you're going to be pulled, how you're going to be pulled, what are your susceptibilities, well, I want to be liked. That's good. That's good to know that, because that's going to come up. I want my boss to approve of me. Okay, good. That's going to come up. So what do you do with that when that shows up? Is you recognize that it's there. Especially that's a huge start. It doesn't feel like much, but it's massively important just to see it. Because then you have the power to say, well, okay, I feel that strongly within me, but can I stay within my own truth and present, openly, but present my perspective on things. And I think that helps you to return to yourself, because as you said, there are those who are more other referencing. It's really difficult to return to the self. And for those of us who are self-referencing, it's a bit easier to return to the self, but we're still being influenced. We're still being impacted. Do we see it? And can we also work with that?
That's much less of a fixed category than I realized. I think a lot of times people in the Enneagram world are like, well, you're either self-referencing or you're others referencing, but it's not just that fixed.
No. I absolutely agree with you on
All
that.
of us are impacted in certain ways, in certain settings, by certain people under certain conditions because of certain factors. Like all of us.
Yeah.
We can all be really influenced and impacted. None of us are an island. Like we developed these strategies, these types. We went down that path because we were trying to get certain needs met. And so when there's an externalization there's the promise of the need being met, like you're going to get this job if you can essentially be more like me.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to function better in this relationship. We're going to have a better relationship, you and me, if you can be more like me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is like all of us are going to get influenced by that. The most self-referencing person in the world is still going to get influenced by that.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going to get uncomfortable. Like, I don't want that situation or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. The driven part for all of us, including those who are more self-referencing, it may, in a job interview, it may not show up the way it would for another referencing type, where the other referencing type definitely tunes into what it is that person wants in order to please them, get the job, and maybe even losing the sense of what are my own values in this space. The more self-referencing types, we might go in there and say, well, I think I know what I want. I think I know what I need here. We might go in with that, but we might also be willing to throw that out the window very quickly because there's an opportunity that scratches an itch in that moment.
Oh, I've totally done that.
Like I have seen myself do that. Been like, oh, I'm totally self-referencing. Yeah, but I'm self-referencing in a way that I can self-reference and change my own self-referencing beliefs or desires at any given time. So I think values are more deep. It's more of a deeply rooted thing, and being able to come back to what are those few. And you don't have 15. People talk about like values, and they think, well, do I have to have like 15 of them? Or no. You only need a few. They tend to only be a few when you think through them. And those are the ones you want to go into these roles with and ask yourself. And again, these aren't fixed and solid. They're more at this stage, this is what I value. And this is what I would like. And I don't have to moralize them. I just have to understand that they are there. And that is truly me. And can I function in this environment in a way that's integral? Like I can be fully truthful with myself in this space.
I like that. I like connecting drawnness to values in a context where you might start to get pulled away.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. But there's something to that is going, well, how you fight for your drawn state is it's going to be through the key of certain values that sort of guard and protect you. That can be the gatekeeper of the you don't want to lose sight of. And if you can't be that, that's not an environment for you. That's something that's come up with a lot of people who I think of 3 different clients I know who are all publishing books this year. Like they went through the process of going through, different agents and different publishers. And, you get a lot of rejection from publishers, like this house, well, they don't want you. They didn't want you for this reason. They didn't like this about your project. And they're really blatant, like, hey, if you can go basically change everything you just wrote, then we'll take your book, kind of thing. We'll take a second look or something. There's all this rejection. And coming back to this idea of, with all of them, about if they don't get the thing that you say, this is it, like, this is right. Because that's what they say. They're like, I know this is the right work. I know that I shouldn't be changing that. This is what it's supposed to be. I was like, well, then the person who you should be working with is the person who gets that, who values that about you. And I don't know about the third, but I know 2 or 3 of them ended up finding someone who's a publisher who's like, oh, we love this. They can get behind it. They can put energy behind it. They're excited about it because they're like, yeah, it's great. We'll do it. But they're not actually excited about it. You don't actually want to work with that person. And I think so many of us are like looking for the affirmation. Will you kind of accept the thing that I am? Or can I bend enough to fit into the thing you are? That, and it's not like there's not situations for that. There's not times to compromise. But on the whole, can you return to this place of like, no, I actually have something that is valuable. Like, I am something valuable, and I want to be in an environment that lets me thrive. I want to be in a relationship that I can be me. I can actually be the person who's growing. I want to be in a context, in a work, and all of these different things that I can actually be me. We've heard from people who are trying to get sober. They're like, well, I don't know who I'm going to be friends with anymore. Because like, if I'm not drinking, I know that these certain people aren't going to want to hang out. It's like, oh man, these are hard calls sometimes.
It is very difficult. The process of we're talking about a process that can take some time. It can take months. It can take years. This is not about like you need to make the shift in 24 hours. I think it's also growing into it because it's going to require a number of different things happening to you in growth. You're going to have enough courage. That's a big deal. Courage is not easy. Courage is not natural. Courage is something you have to actually choose.
I like that. Courage is not natural. You have to choose.
No,
that's
fear
really
is natural,
true.
Man. Reaction to fear is much more natural,
Oh, that's so true.
Whether it's fight, which appears like as courage, it may not be courage. It's just a reaction to fear. Courage may require you to be vulnerable. Courage may require you to speak up for yourself if you're not used to speaking up for yourself. But it's just terrifying. And courage is something that is necessary for us to do the thing that is true to our values and to move into that drawn space.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one. I think that would, to me, it's one of the key pieces to to growth. And being okay with yourself if you don't have it in the moment.
Yeah.
I remember telling you and Suzanne that a big decision I had to make. And I said to you guys, I know I have to make this decision. I know it's coming. I just don't have the courage right now to do it.
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to be truthful. It was really hard, but I wanted to be truthful. It has nothing to do with like,
well, how are you going to get to courage if you don't start there?
Yeah.
Like the first step of courage is admitting, like, I don't want to do this, or I'm scared of doing this.
Yeah.
I think that's super important to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't name it, how are you going to end up finding the courage?
Yeah.
Like, and saying it out loud just to other people, like getting the accountability of that is kind of building towards it. Like, vulnerability is not the endpoint. Vulnerability is the door opening for you to have more courage or more willingness to step into that place. And I love that.
Yeah. And then I think it develops a little bit into then you can begin to articulate more clearly for yourself, who do I want to be? Who is it the person that I'm becoming? And it always has to be connected to who you're becoming. Because it's very easy for us to say, well, I would like to be somebody I'm not. I've heard this from different types who are like, I don't like my type. I don't want to be my type. had a client this week who literally said that, like, I don't like my type. I don't see any good in it.
Yeah. I've had that conversation. They're like, I wish I was this type.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so you can have this and this and this and this issue?
Yeah.
They're like, well,
yeah.
it's like there's not no type is better than
Yeah.
any other. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Totally.
here's all the things that you'd have to deal with if you were over there, and you have no idea how to solve those problems.
Right. It's not even within you to solve. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is your struggle, but you have the solutions
Mhm.
that are in you as well to deal with who you are. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who you have in mind to become has to be connected, deeply connected and rooted in who you are at your deepest levels. That's kind of a weird way of saying it, but think of it as, I've overused this analogy, but the acorn. The acorn genetically has everything it needs to become an oak tree. It isn't an oak tree, but it has everything it needs, except for one thing, and that's the conversation with nature itself, with reality itself.
With the ground,
with the water,
yeah.
with the sun, with all the things that are going to both nurture and stress it. And that is part of what helps us to grow. So you are becoming something, but that who you are becoming has to also be a part of who you already are. And that becomes clearer and clearer. It's never going to be perfectly clear ever at any point in time, because whatever's in front of you is going to call you to a deeper level of yourself, a deeper truth of yourself. And each step is, in that regard, is going to be one that you haven't faced before. And so it's going to feel scary. It's going to require the courage, but a sense of who am I and who am I becoming? And I think that's an important part of maintaining, again, your integrity. Who are you? A way there is not just like, I've got to silo myself for 5 weeks to figure it out. It's in conversation oftentimes with people. It is pulling yourself away, but it's also listening to other people. And like you said, there are people that we are surrounded by that may not necessarily have our best in mind. And that's a tough reality to come to. But there's always someone that does. There's always someone that believes in you to some degree. And they can sometimes say to you, that's not really you. You're going in a direction that it doesn't reflect who you are. Right. I've seen you at your best, and this is what you look like. And these voices that are in our lives are so very important to us and can remind us of who we are, because we can lose that. And so the very act of coaching, getting coached, is a very act of doing that. Like, I need to be reminded. I need that reminder of who I am so I can keep moving forward, reaching out to friends, reaching out to, family members that you can trust who have your best in mind. I think it'd be helpful.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I feel like sometimes a huge part of what I do with a client is just reminding them who they are and that it's good. Because the messages that they receive and tell themselves, when they're trying to DIY it, or the messages they receive externally is, you're not enough and it's not good to be you. And no, it's like, no, it is good.
Yeah.
Like you can do this. You are good. This is good. It is good to be you. You have really good gifts. And then just having that little reset makes them interact in their own lives differently. And I love that. Like, that's one of the highlights of my day when I've gotten off a call where I'm like, that's what they left with. They left knowing that it's good to be them, that that is a good thing, that they have gifts to give, and that they are actually enough. They don't have to be something else. Yeah. And that is an absolute gift. And then, when I do that, I'm like, oh, right, so am I.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, that's that gift that returns back. Yeah. So I think when people are feeling that externally driven state, like actually returning to the values and then wondering ask yourself the question, is this the context that's actually best for me? If I know that I'm starting to receive this message that I'm wanting to move toward a more drawn state, I'm wanting to be more in sync with my values, that might make you question certain things about your environment. And you don't need to rush it, but just look.
Yeah.
Look and see if there's a shift coming for your life, because there very well may be.
Yeah. Really good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. We didn't have an intro at the beginning of the episode because I wanted to just jump into the story. But if you happen to pop in here for the first time, my name is Jim Zartman, and you were just listening to me and Joel Hubbard talk about this idea of being externally driven. And if you didn't listen to the panel series, go back and listen to the whole series of panels we did on this Driven to Drawn topic to learn a bit more about how other people think and operate, which is a really good thing to understand, but also understand a bit more about your type and how you can grow through this process of learning to move from a driven state of impulse and effort and try to a drawn state of invitation and intention and flow. So this officially concludes our Driven to Drawn series for now. Of course, this concept and this topic will come back around. We are working on some materials so that we can put this in a helpful format for you. So stay tuned for that. Best way to do that is to be signed up for our newsletter. You can do that at our website, theartofgrowth.org, or by taking one of our free online tests there, our free Enneagram test, our free instincts test, which will help you grow in self and social awareness. And we've made a bunch of changes to our website as well, so you can go and look at what it would look like to bring in our whole team to coach at your business, or you can reach out to us for one-on-one coaching or couples coaching, group coaching, things like that, as well as our next round of Enneagram certification in our process. But for now, my friends, thank you so much. It's so awesome to have you here, and we appreciate it. So may you go and live more and more into your drawn state. May you include the voices of others, but remember to return to your own, to come back and ask how it sits with you. How can you be in integrity with yourself, regardless of what else is pulling at you today? And may this year be the most intentional one to date. Grace and growth, my friends.